Hear your favorite NFL legends sharing their stories and insights every week right here on Thursday Night Tailgate with Chris Mascaro and Bob Lazari. Take it away, guys.
There's no way out.
All right, now back with us and making his 11th appearance here on Thursday Night Tailgate is our good friend and former Chiefs and Jets Pro Bowl kicker Nick Lowery. Let me remind you about Nick's background. He was born in Munich, Germany, grew up in Washington, D.C., and attended Dartmouth College, again, extending the Ivy League night we're having here on Thursday Night Tailgate. And he got into both Princeton and Dartmouth, but chose Dartmouth, and we'll find out a little bit more about that. But got his master's from Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, played in the NFL from 1978 to 1996 for the Patriots, Chiefs, and Jets. But if that wasn't easy enough for him, he went out. He got cut an amazing 11 times for a guy who should now be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He's a 3-time Pro Bowler. He's a 7-time All-Pro, ranks 10th all-time in field goals made and 13th in field goal attempts. He's the Chiefs' all-time leader in points scored. He received the prestigious Byron Whizzer White Award from the NFL Players Association in 1993 for all the great work that he does in the community. He was elected to the Kansas City Chiefs Hall of Fame in 2009. He established the Nick Lowery Youth Foundation, dedicated to helping disadvantaged youth, especially Native American youth. And like we said, every time Nick has joined us on the show, how a guy like him is not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame when he has 235 more points, made 80% of his field goals, to Jan Stenerud's 64%, remains a mystery to both Bob and I. But we are honored he is back with us again tonight here on TNT. Hey, Nick, thanks for coming back on the show.
Hi, Nick. Well, thanks, guys. How are you? This is the 11th time. Am I going to get locked out at some point for overexposure?
No, but I have a sneaking suspicion, since, again, we continue to campaign for you to get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But I have a sneaking suspicion when our Thursday Night Tailgate Hall of Fame votes come out here very shortly, be leading into our 7th anniversary special in September. Nick Lowery's name might be on that list, so just an FYI. We think that much of you, my friend.
Thank you. I appreciate it, guys. And, it's important to recognize the storytellers out there that call attention to the positive things. When you watch television news, they still are locked into how many murders, how many tragedies, and then occasionally you get a story like that wonderful story this past week of the Thai soccer team that was saved, which I did not think was going to happen. But most of the time, 80% of the news is so negative. So it's great to have people like you focus and reinforce the fact how many good people doing good things are out there.
Yeah, well, we appreciate that very much. Yeah, that's very important to us here on this show. Nick, before we talk anything about football, I know you're working diligently to help protect current and former players from CTE. And CTE, on top of being an Ivy League night here on the show, CTE has been something that we've talked an awful lot about. And there's some groundbreaking research out there that can help protect the brain, and I know you're heavily involved with it. Do you mind updating us on what's the latest work that you're doing around that?
Well, the first thing I'll say is that we are really noticing a significant acceleration and momentum in terms of the legitimate science, and it's not going to stop, that's coming out. May 20th, Dateline NBC did a wonderful story, and it was nominally called marijuana, but the piece on my company, Ken Life Sciences, is totally focused on the non-marijuana, non-hemp, non-high, non-THC, unbelievable positive effects of molecules that are based on cannabidiol structure. So we have 2 molecules now and 2 different patents that are focused. The first one is KLS 13019, which is a long name, but it's a molecule that's 40 times or 50 times stronger than anything we've seen out there, 400 times medically safer and 10 times more bioavailable, and it's incredibly effective. And we're going to move on towards the next phase of FDA, double-blind studies that you have to go through to help with the development of basically a daily vitamin for the brain. The second is another molecule that's more focused on opiates and the effect of opiates, and neutralizing the effect of opiates because it looks like CBDs actually can isolate and help with the specific gene that is exacerbated, that has to do with addiction. And so if you think about the 50,000 people that died this past year from opiate addiction, which is more than, basically were killed in the entire Vietnam War. It's beyond a tragedy. It's beyond an epidemic. And I believe that we can make a huge dent in that. And the most important thing is the research continues to be very consistent, whether it's Stanford University, whether it's Dr. Julius Axelrod and patent number 6630507, which is CBDs as antioxidants and neuroprotectants. It's basically creating, as I think I talked to you about before, a resiliency and restoring and empowering the individual neurons in the brain to withstand impact. So they become the helmet that in the movie Concussion, Dr. Benedict Malu talked about, could never be achieved. And yet now we believe that we can significantly, basically 500% more resiliency to impact for the brain, which gives some real hope for the game of football, which is the best game I ever was connected with, the best thing that ever happened in my life. And we don't want to see diminished because we don't face up to this really serious issue.
And Nick, I think I've heard, obviously correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe I've heard you talking about the potential for biomarkers and being able to see if a person has CTE based on those biomarkers before it's too late, and maybe even some of these molecules working to help reverse the effects. Do I have that right?
Yeah, and basically we're in a culture where people, perhaps rightly, are very, very careful because of the FDA guidelines, which are much more strict than what's developed in Europe, for instance, where they can't make these claims before they are beyond, any normal standard proven. So I know a friend of mine who actually has lived a lot here, used to play for the Green Bay Packers, who was the identified player as number 2 in the study of a living player with CTE, who I met in Vegas a while back, about a month and a half ago. And he told me that he's doing really quite well because of products right now that are available privately, but of course can't be publicly marketed. So the point is there are a number of choices out there now that are being tested, that are being rightly proven and in a disciplined way analyzed to see what's effective. Dr. Benedict Malu has his own device for identifying tau protein in the brain before the person's died. So there are great things. One of the great things about America is we come together in small groups to solve important problems. As Alexis de Tocqueville said back in 1830 in Democracy in America, one of the great books ever written about American culture. And that's still true. So despite the fake news out there, despite the politics and the polarization of America, there are lots of people doing great things. And if it's mom and apple pie, I think football's in there in that same sentence. And let's do something to protect it and give kids a chance to learn the incredibly important lessons of teamwork and working through defeat and adversity, character, toughness, all those things, focus, that are missing perhaps to some degree from other sports.
Bob, questions for Nick?
Great to speak with you again, Nick. And earlier in the show, talking to Ross Tucker about his days at Princeton, Nick, he freely admitted that he was more of an athlete than a student, although he knew the importance of an Ivy League education. Take me back to your days at Dartmouth and your approach to the classroom versus the football field, Nick.
Well, I'd like to give a lot of credit to a man I came to love. Jay Krauthamel was my head coach. He had to take the baton from Bob Blackman, the legend who'd won, several consecutive Ivy championships and was sort of like the John Wooden of the Ivy League. And he won a couple, but, when we had him, we weren't as successful as people wanted us to be. But the one thing that Jake was so full of integrity about was making sure we were academic focused first. And I just came to love him. He went on to be athletic director at Syracuse, and I believe he has some level of dementia now. But if anybody's knowing him and is out in that area, I'd love to make sure that he knows where he's loved, because you just know the character of a man when during the tough circumstances, when you've got a great player who's got a chem test or something that sort of has to be delayed, and yet the integrity was always there. So, I look back at Dartmouth. I was a drama major, and I switched to government, and I was a good student. I wasn't a great student undergrad-wise, and because I had a reasonably vague goal of being a good student. And I did play baseball and football as well. And what I came to learn, and what you see with a lot of Ivy League players, is they just don't tend to make mistakes consistently. They'll learn from their mistakes. They learn to work on their weaknesses, and they come back better. So they may not have as much strength. They may not be as talented or as fast, but they just don't make a lot of mistakes. Reggie Williams, one of the great linebackers and probably one of the most unheralded linebackers in NFL history, 13 years with Cincinnati, almost lost his leg a few years ago, but just incredibly bright, smart, and tough as nails linebacker. I'm sure you saw him a few times against the Steelers. What I noticed when I went back to Harvard was I'd learned how to focus and I'd learned how to commit. And that's, to me, is what it's all about. You just don't give yourself any option. You're just going to, I just decide I'm going to get A- or better. I didn't say A or better. I don't want to kill myself, but, and I love the work. And I was doing, of course, what I love doing anyway, but you're surrounded by, at the Harvard Kennedy School in the mid-career program, 200 students, 100 Americans, 99 foreigners from 80 different countries. And you're around people that want to make a difference in the world. And what you come to learn, I think, as you grow as a human being is how important it is to surround yourself with good people. So it was a lot easier to do well a second time around. Like I said, I was a good student, not a great student undergrad-wise, but then as a legislative aide right out of college, I was an excellent legislative aide because I was totally focused and committed. And in the end, as a kicker, you better be focused because you got 11 very large, ugly guys who smell terrible, 20 feet away. They're shouting obscenities at you. They're very creative. And, of course, they're always talking about your mom and things that you didn't even know about your mom. You better know how to focus. If you're on the Pittsburgh sidelines, you got some fans that are like Shakespeare with their use of the language to try to knock you off your focus.
And Nick, he also told us that playing various sports helped him become a better all-around athlete. As far as a kicker, playing different sports, did it help you become a better kicker, make you stronger leg-wise?
No, it didn't make me stronger leg-wise, but I was a pitcher. I had 0.38, 0.78 earned run average my last 2 years in high school. We were league champions. I was a 1.0 earned run average as a freshman at Dartmouth, and you're on an island as a pitcher. You're on an island essentially as a kicker. So mentally, all these kickers that are unbelievable. Blair Walsh is an example. I mean, he's a good kicker, but he missed a couple key kicks. And, once that happens, it's hard to get it back. So physically, I got bigger and stronger. I was 187 my rookie year. I had the best mile and a half time on the team. And I began to shift more and more to not heavy squats, but lunges with 240 pounds by the end of my career. I do sleds with squats with 800 pounds. I ran with weights in my pants. All those things to build up your strength. I did ballet and karate. And the training, what you notice is the training trains not only your body, it trains your mind. And because the brain can't separate too much between the stress of pain that you have to have as you're working through a really tough workout and the stress of being on the field. And I think that helps you, stay tough. And then, of course, only through experience do you get the ability to not let a miss hurt you too much, to learn from it and then move on to the next one. And that's how the great players are. Joe Montana would say, he certainly missed his share of passes, but when the chips were down, who else would you rather have on a fourth down? I mean, I'd have him over Tom Brady, frankly. So
Nick, one more before we let you go. And I got to get your thoughts on the new kickoff rule change regarding who can block and when and no running start by the kicking team. and that is, to me, that is just going to be a disaster for the officials to try to figure out.
I just think, first of all, I've said this, I think, before. If they would just try 1 year to not have any rules changes, I bet you the efficiency and the accuracy of the calls would go up 50%. And this one's maybe the hardest of all to call because, first of all, the players can't run until the ball's kicked. So that gives an extra 10 yards to the returner. Second of all, you've got the officials who are trying to follow 8 players running 25 miles an hour in a 55-yard wide field, basically, spread out in often tough conditions, and they've got to figure out who's blocking within 15 yards or not. And that's got to be almost impossible. It's going to be a little bit like that soccer offside rule in the World Cup. It's just almost impossible to get it right. And it's just going to confuse people. I think there'll be a few big returns that wouldn't have been there. Maybe that's great for the game. I hope that it reduces concussions. It may do that. Maybe that's the most important thing. But it's going to be a nightmare for the referees.
Nick, let our listeners know, how can they stay up to date with all the great things that you're doing, whether it's online or over social media?
Well, you can go on the Marco Iannuzzi website where there's a page, Why I Think Nick Lowery is a Better Athlete Than I Am. He's written a wonderful piece about Nick and how smart he is and had a better career than him and is more humble than he is. Just kidding. No, seriously, Mark's an awesome guy. I love him to death. If you're listening, Marco. Anyway, go to nicklowry.org, NICKLOWERY.org, and you can see the work we do with Native youth, leadership programs, anti-bullying programs, and we do something called Champions for the Homeless. This Sunday will be our 40th. We've served 105,000 homeless folks over the last 12 years. We have the best musicians in the Southwest coming down on Sunday. We have 10 to 20 NFL players every time, and we even had, if you can believe it, Richie Incognito, who at our Easter one. And I just thought, what a blessing for somebody who's rightfully perhaps was put through some hell because of what he had done to and gone past what was necessary in the hazing in Miami. But then here's a guy who's beginning to lead with his heart, and he said some really cool things. I thought to me, that's what it's about, is putting people in positions to bring out the best in them and give them a chance to learn to harness and direct their energy in a truly positive way. And we've had, of course, Larry Fitzgerald was there at Christmas, David Johnson the Christmas before. We had Jatavius Thomas, I think that's how you pronounce it, with the Broncos at Easter. There's just some wonderful people that players that are giving of themselves, and nothing more humbling than being there with folks that are out on the street every night during the day, except for when they come in for their meals, in 115-degree heat sometimes out here. And just helps us, I think, remember what's important, that we're all God's children and we all deserve to be loved.
Nick, fantastic stuff as always. We can't thank you enough for coming back for an 11th time, and we're already looking forward to number 12. All the best to you and your family, and hopefully we get the honor of having you back on the show again real soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
Take care, Nick.
All right. Take care, Nick.
You got it. Bye-bye.
That is the great Nick Lowery. And Bob, like I've said a couple of times here recently, and we've been blessed to have some of our really good friends back. Now we're in double digits for the number of times they've joined us on the show. But I got a sneaking suspicion Nick may be in a Hall of Fame for us here in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I hope the regular people at Canton are listening too, Chris, because the guy that played that long and made 80% of his kicks, to me, it's a no-brainer.